I'm here with my grandfather, Rabbi Zvi Dershowitz, and I will let him describe his narrative. But he had a pretty interesting, very fascinating life. So thank you, Grandpa, for joining me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you at the house, Eytan. You know, this is not the first time you've been here, right?
Well, exactly. So the first question is, if you could, our topic on our Jewish on our this unit is about the Jewish narrative. Okay. So if you could talk about what the Jewish narrative means to you, or specifically your life story or your narrative.
How many years do you have for me to tell you this answer?
You can talk about 5,000 years ago from when Moses, or
no.
Okay, your life.
My life story. There's a lot of drama to it. Essentially, if it wasn't for 33 days, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be alive. That's because my birth in Czechoslovakia, we had a wonderful family. I got to tell you, my parents were as content and happy in shul as they were at the opera. So we had a very cultured but extremely, it's not Orthodox, it's just Jewish life. I didn't know that some people don't go to shul on Shabbat. And we were members of Maccabi, sports. My parents sent me skiing with Maccabi when I was 8 years old in the Carpathian Mountains, But make a very long story short, my grandfather, when he heard about Hitler and saw what was going on, 37, 38, brought my father and his brothers together, and he said, this anti-Semite is different from all others, and no matter how much wealth we had, my parents said, we're going, and we left and we came to America 33 days before Hitler marched in. So how can you say anything else is more dramatic than that in long term?
Very dramatic, and I think that's a very, very interesting fact to your narrative. But I think this could or could not, you might not have answered this, but what event has changed your outlook on life?
Well, there's no one event. It just depends. Today, whatever happened today certainly changed my outlook. But it wasn't. But tomorrow it's going to be different. Certainly when, now looking back, certainly having met America, then having met wonderful Tova and married her, how can that, by the way, when your mother was born, that changed, see? So there are many events. There is no one event, and it would be foolish to say any one thing. It depends on the moment. It depends on the situation. Happily, there were many events. For example, your grandma Tova and I, we traveled the world. I worked on board these. I was lecturer and chaplain. 71 countries. There's not one event, but sum total. How can you not be happy with having been at and interacted with people in 71 countries? But if I hadn't married her, that's another event. Mm-hmm. If my parents wouldn't have saved my life, that's another event. So a lot of events happened like that.
I see. And we talked about earlier how came to America and you had a lot of opportunity. Well, here and you met your wife and you had children, including my mom. So that in a way has to do with tradition. So I will ask you in the next question, which Jewish holiday or tradition instills Jewish values in you?
That's like saying, you have 4 children, which one do you love more than the others? There's no meaningful answer, because when we get together, we get together just about every Shabbat, right? So where did you learn Birkat Hamazon? Remember, we used to clap to it and everything else. Well, the Shabbat is an important holiday, but Pesach is a wonderful holiday, Hanukkah and Sukkot. And again, that day happens to be the most joyous when I do it. Maybe when I fast on Yom Kippur, it's not the most joyous, but the most significant. So again, it depends on the meaning you give to each particular moment in your life. And by the way, today is a very important moment in my life. You see? It's not a holiday, but the fact that you came to interview me, I'm thrilled.
Well, thank you, Grandpa. I appreciate that. And how do you feel closer to God?
Well, you see, you have to go to Rambam. You have to go to Maimonides to answer the question, what is God, or who is God? And you know what Maimonides said? Maimonides said there's no way you can say who or what is God. You can say, by the way, what is God not? But you cannot say what. So if I cannot tell you what is God, how can I tell you the closest? But I can tell you in terms of the Torah, when the interpretation is that we are made in the image of God, that's a wrong interpretation. You see, I blame Moses. He didn't leave us a dictionary, so we don't know. But B'Tselem Elohim means in the shadow of God, close to God. So that's your question. How do you feel close to God? Well, certainly when things go wonderful, and when things go horrible, then I also feel that I'm not alone in this world. There is something beyond me that helps me or gives me joy, both, beside what I can do. I'm not that capable of solving all the problems or having all of the joy in the world. There's something beyond me. Now, the question is, what is the definition of something? And I feel that is the presence of God in my life.
I see. I don't know if you partially just answered this, but how do you feel most most disconnected from God? Or is that not really?
Well, I can tell you the opposite to your question. Look, I remember when we left my city, Brno, in Czechoslovakia, or where my mom used to live, her parents. I said goodbye to my grandparents. Nobody knew there was going to be Shoah. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? That somebody's going to kill somebody. So some people say, you see, how could their God have done it? I don't feel disconnected with God, because I feel that it's just like if somebody would break into your house. Is it because God told him, or because he made the decision, the crook made the decision himself? So I cannot blame God for anything. I can only have faith in God gives me inner strength to go on. And once in a while something terrible happens, and then I need more of it. I don't need less of it. So I don't see disconnect from God. From that point of view, I'm an optimist, and there is no disconnection that I know of, that I ever feel that I experienced.
I see. So then moving topics, you did mention how you have 4 children, and you have 9 grandchildren. So you had some traditions, or Judaism as a whole. You taught your children, to follow the traditions of Judaism. So how did you pass down the learning of Judaism and the traditions of Judaism?
Well, I had an advantage that 99.9% Jews don't have. I was a camp director for 23 years. Jewish camping, not camps for Jews, but Jewish camp. You understand the content. That's how I met my wife. We were idealists. Nobody paid us a lot of money, but we did it. Jewish camping, and the last one you know of is Ramah. I directed Alonim for 2 years, Herzl Camp for 8 years in the Midwest. The whole concept was joyous Judaism. See? Don't make Judaism separate from playing baseball. See? If you play baseball in Hebrew, you don't have to go. Or if you tell a maisel, a story, whatever, around a midnight campfire, I impact, and it's happy. And by the way, you can have a hot dog, kosher hot dog, while you're learning about the midrash that you tell about the campfire. So my philosophy was joyous Judaism, and I also have another philosophy. I was able to impact my children up to age 18 or so. Then it's important for them to be independent of me. I always give them love, but I do not tell them what to do. If I didn't do it in 18 years, I wasn't going to do it in longer than that. So each one of our kids is a little different. As you know, one lives in Israel, you know your mom, and so on. You know about one in Washington, D.C., and what she does in the Jewish community. Our son Hillel, who's totally involved with helping other people. I think we did a good job. But the influence is only up to age 18. The home, and I didn't preach to them. It's just what we did. So when my kids saw Tova and I go to the Soviet Union to help the Jews in the Soviet Union at great risk to ourselves, then here, Toby goes to Ethiopia and helps Ethiopian Jews, and they got this as a gift. I didn't know you were going to ask the question. See, we were models for the kids, but we didn't preach to them. That's the answer.
Very, very interesting answer, I think.
So you better say that. You're my grandson.
I think then you talked about tradition, so I think though I'll go back to your life for a sec, your greater life. Has Judaism always been a part of your life, including when you were a child and up to, I know as an adult you were a rabbi. So yeah.
There was no other way I understood or saw life. I mean, hopefully I did other things. I went to school, got a degree in engineering, but even that was for the purpose, because I was an ardent Zionist. I believed that in days of Palestine, before there was Israel, I believed that we were going to go to Palestine to build infrastructure. I didn't necessarily believe that you have to go to be a kibbutznik, but I believed, so that's why I studied engineering. And then when I spent a year studying in Israel, then I learned other things, but Judaism has constantly been a total part of my life, not just an incidental part of my life. And I don't understand life in any other way. Now that may be limiting me, you see, but I don't think so. I mean, I think I know technology a little bit. I wish I could learn more about computers from you. No, it's been total part of my life. I don't see the world in any other way.
I see. And we're almost done here. I have a couple more questions. How does interpretation affect Judaism? In a way, you can say, a lot of, like Rashi interprets what the Torah says, or we interpret what the Torah says with a lot of our traditions. So in your opinion, how does interpretation affect Judaism?
Oh, that makes a whole difference in the world. For example, in Bereshit, it says, in the first day, Vahi Or, God made light, but there was no sun until the third or fourth day. So do I believe that God made light without the sun and the stars and the moon? No. So light I interpret as love and caring and compassion and propriety and so on. That's light. And so I interpret the Torah that way. I don't interpret it physically. Or Ma Tovu or Halecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha Yisrael. That is poetic parallelism. And if you have a poem, it's not intended to be a fact, right? If a guy writes a poem to a girl he loves, it's an emotion, it's not fact. And so I believe that there are many ways to, God has hands, biyat chazaka uzrana tuyah, that God took us from Egypt with a strong hand and outstretched arm. God has hands, God has arms. So I got to interpret it another way. And that's what makes it very flexible. I'm sorry, my father had one particular view of Judaism. My grandfather is still another, his father another. So I'm allowed to interpret and continue to interpret. That's why the Talmud took 700 years. If we knew it, then we'd do it in one generation. But every generation interpreted differently. So that's why it took 700 years, and interpretation is the rich part of Judaism.
Wow. I'll ask you, because you mentioned, we talked. I talked a little bit about texts and whatnot, including Torah or the Mishnah. What is the significance of texts in Judaism? That's very general. The significance of the Torah, the significance of the Mishnah, etc. What is the significance of those?
Well, luckily, we Jews have been almost, there are exceptions, literate all are in our society. So we have verbal, sometimes edited, records of all the discussion, the debates, not just the law. I'll never forget when we went to Alaska together, didn't we? The Alaskan Indians have a totem pole. That's the only record they have of their 4,000-year history, but a totem pole lasts only about 100, 150 years. So they have a rich record, but we don't know what it is. So the text gives us an opportunity to feel a continuum of our tradition rather than a guesswork of what our tradition is. Though we have dozens of interpretations of any one thing. You know the story, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? So that's what the Talmud is. One scholar says this and this, but the other scholar B says, what are you talking about? It's just the opposite. Third scholar says, you're both wrong. How can you say that? And then we have an opportunity to go ahead and adapt to our life, but within the framework of the tradition, not outside the framework of the tradition. Nobody can ever say there are 2 gods, no matter how much debate we have. That's not being Jewish, you see. So there are certain limitations, but texts give us the opportunity. When I drive a car, I don't have to invent the wheel. I depend on someone else who did it. Okay, I may put in 30 pounds of air or 35 pounds of air. That's my decision. But the tire was made by somebody before me, and I depend on that.
I see. Is there one, and we're going to focus on values here, first of the 2 questions. Is there one value that represents all of Judaism, or what are some key Jewish values, if that makes sense?
Well, that's a tough question. Why is it that we say Shema Yisrael? That's it, right? But then Maimonides come up with 13 principles. What should I choose from those 13 principles and say only one is correct?
You mean of values? Yeah, 13.
Yeah, I mean, those are the values, right? Believe that there's none like Moses unto Moses, or there's only one God, and God doesn't have a body, and so on and so forth. So each of these, so it really depends on where you stand at that particular moment. It's almost like which of the 613 mitzvot is most important. You know what? If somebody is ill, the mitzvah bikur cholim, to visit the ill, that's the most important. But if somebody's hungry, and the mitzvah is to give tzedakah, give bread, that to that person is most important. So frankly, it depends on the moment, what my need is, and how Judaism responds to that particular need at that particular moment. Life is very happily very dynamic, changing every moment. Today I'm not what I was yesterday. If I was, then I'd waste the day. So today the values are different today from, I cannot answer the question any other way.
I see. And I guess then our final question will relate to values. What values are most relevant in contemporary society? That can be either Jewish values or secular, whatnot. Contemporary modern society, what values?
Well, one of them is because of what's going on in the world today with the end of 2013, there's probably more war and contention and fighting among not so much nations, but groups within nations and different cultures would seem to me acceptance of the other person would be one of the most important. Here we go, for example, to Purim. Purim is a nonsensical holiday. You're supposed to get drunk? No. Purim means that we have a lot. This terrible guy Haman, chose to kill the Jews because they were different, and that's ultimately the bottom line of Purim. So here, acceptance of people from a universal point of view, who are different from me, and still honor them and still accept them, except if they want to kill me, Acceptance, I think, would be a very important universal value. It's a Jewish value, it's a universal value. That seems to me the most important. It doesn't mean that they have to believe the way I believe, but they have to only accept me for what I am, in spite of the fact that it's totally contrary to what they believe. And they shouldn't be feeling that they can blow me up because I'm different from them. And I think that's universal. If that happens, then Mashiach is going to come much earlier.
Well, I see. Well, thank you for your insight, Grandpa. I appreciate it. And that will conclude our interview. So thank you.
Very well. Thanks for coming.